for the longest time, they had no historical archaeological evidence that the Hittites even existed. But just in the last 100 or 200 years, they have found that evidence and proved the Bible once again to be right. Isn't that cool? Yeah. You can trust it even when you don't know you can trust it. That's called faith. We have one more slide for chapter 22, then we're into chapter 23. And it's kind of a relatively short, straightforward chapter. We should get through all of it. But if we don't, then we don't. So where we're at here, Abraham just, was willing to sacrifice his only begotten son, his son Isaac. He had Ishmael, but it's his only son Isaac. And God stopped him because it all foreshadows what God is going to do with his only begotten son, Jesus. And so all of them, Abraham, Isaac, and their two servants have returned to Beersheba. And so this is where we're picking it up now in verses 20 through 24. Now after these things, it was told to Abraham, "Behold, Milcah has also borne children to your brother Nahor." I gotta get my cheat sheet out. Here we go. Uz, his firstborn, Buzz, his brother. That's pretty cool that there was a name Buzz, like Buzz Aldrin. That's awesome. Or Buzz Lightyear. Kemuel, the father of Aram. Kesed, Hazo, Pildash, Jidlaph, and Bethuel. Bethuel fathered Rebekah. These 8 Milcah bore to Nahor, Abraham's brother. Moreover, his concubine, whose name was Rumah, bore Teba, Gahem, Tahash, and Mahakah. Sounds like a bird calling.
Could you repeat this again, please?
Get out. So, recall that. All right, this is we're going to get into some pretty messed up, weird genealogy here. All right, recall that Milcah married her uncle Nahor, Abraham's brother. Okay, who's still alive, obviously. She is the daughter of Haran, Abraham's other brother, who died back before he was called into the promised land, into the land of the Canaanites. So she is Abraham's niece and Lot's sister, because Lot is also the son of Haran. So it's Lot's sister here that married her uncle, the other brother of Abraham. So during his many years of separation living in the land of Canaan from his homeland in Ur of the Chaldees, Abraham is now learning he has 8 nephews via his brother and niece. And I went back and forth. Are they really his nephews since his niece bore them, or are they his great-nephews? Well, I guess you follow the brother or the male genealogy, so it's his nephews, okay? These are the weird questions I ask myself. So his brother Nahor brought that total up to 12 with his concubine. And I'm sure we've all heard of that word. The Hebrew word is Pelegesh. That's it. Pelegesh. An inferior secondary wife subordinate to the primary wife. I kind of just think of like Hagar, She wasn't called a concubine, but in essence, that's kind of what she was, because she was secondary to and a servant of Sarah. Again, that wasn't God's plan, right? They did that on their own. It was Sarah's dumb idea to bring Hagar into the family, all right? And his family, there's still a bunch of pagans in the Ur of Chaldees. So during which time where his brother Nahor is having all these kids, Abraham only got 2, all right? So why are we told all this? This is kind of a shift from, we were just up on Mount Moriah with Abraham wanting to kill his only son, and now we're told about all these children that his brother had. Why? What's so significant about it? Well, it's right there in blue. The thing that's in parentheses is what's really important here, okay? Rebekah, which would be Abraham's great niece under Nahor, or great niece under Milcah, will become Isaac's wife, as we'll learn in the next chapter, chapter 24, verse 67. That's quite a long chapter. That might be a few months from now. So she'll become Isaac's wife, and the 2 of them will conceive Jacob, who will be the father of the Israelites. Capiche? I guess, all right, Polly's the only one that's awake yet. Wake up! Wake up! Drink your tea and water. All right. So, now who wants to wake up and read this? It's a short chapter. It's 20 verses. Genesis 23. Any takers?
I can read it.
There we go. That's what I thought. You can read your version, Stephen.
And Sarah lived 127 years. These were the years of the life of Sarah. Sarah died in Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And Abraham came to mourn for Sarah and to weep for her. And Abraham rose from before his dead and spoke to the sons of Heth, saying, I am a sojourner and a foreign resident among you. Give me a possession for a burial site among you, that I may bury my dead out of my sight. And the sons of Heth answered Abraham, saying to him, Hear us, my lord. You are a mighty prince among us. Bury your dead in the choicest of our burial sites. None of us will refuse you his burial sites for burying your dead. So Abraham rose and bowed to the people of the land, the sons of Heth. And he spoke with them, saying, If it is your desire for me to bury my dead out of my sight, hear me and meet me with Ephron, the son of Zohar, for me. And he gave me the cave of Machpelah, which belongs to him, which is at the end of his field. For the full price, let him give it to me in your presence as a possession for a burial site. So Ephron was sitting among the sons of Heth, and Ephron the Hittite answered Abraham in the hearing of the sons of Heth, even of all who went in the gate of his city, saying, No, my lord, hear me. I give you the field, and I give you the cave that is in it. In the sight of the sons of my people I give it to you. Bury your dead. And Abraham bowed before the people of the land. And he spoke to Ephron in the hearing of the people of the land, saying, If you only please hear me, I will give the silver for the field. Accept it from me, that I may bury my dead there. And Ephron answered Abraham, saying to him, My lord, hear me. A piece of land worth 400 shekels of silver. What is that between me and you? So bury your dead. So Abraham heard Ephron. And Abraham weighed out for Ephron the silver which he had named in the hearing of the sons of Heth, 400 shekels of silver, commercial standard. So Ephron's field, which was in Machpelah, which faced Mamre, the field and the cave which was in it, and all the trees which were in the field, that were within all the confines of its border, were deeded over to Abraham as purchased in the sight of the sons of Heth, before all who came in at the gate of his city. After this, Abraham buried Sarah his wife in the cave of the field at Machpelah, facing Mamre, that is Hebron, and the land of Canaan. So the field and the cave that is in it were deeded over to Abraham for a possession for a burial site by the sons of Heth.
Thank you, Stephen. That was great. I don't think he had one hiccup in that entire read. That's impressive. All right, so Genesis 23 was one of these chapters you read through, and you get what's being communicated, but you kind of get this wrong impression, really. And I know John knows this because he told me before class that he looked through it, and he's like, yeah, it's kind of interesting what you can get if you do a deeper study into the history here. So that's what we're going to do. So Sarah lived 127 years. These were the years of the life of Sarah, and Sarah died at Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan, and Abraham went in to mourn for Sarah and to weep for her. And Abraham rose up before his dead and said to the Hittites, I am a sojourner and foreigner among you. Give me property among you for a burying place, that I may bury my dead out of my sight. So we'll get to that map here in a second. So this chapter takes place about 20 years after the previous chapter where Abraham was willing to offer up Isaac as a sacrifice. So a couple decades has passed. So it's kind of a big scene change here. Now Sarah is dead at age 127. Again, this is relatively shortly after the flood. The biosphere hasn't yet degraded to the point we have it now, so people are living longer. Abraham is currently about 137 years old. And that makes Isaac about 37. Okay? And he's still not married. What's wrong with this guy? All right? He must have been ugly. The only woman whose age of death is recorded is Sarah in the whole Bible. Okay? Yeah, I didn't know that either until I did this research. I mean, not even Mother Mary. Well, I guess she might have still been alive when Revelation was written. I don't know. But though Mary, the mother of Jesus, was favored, we know that from the Gospels, it's only Sarah that is used as a role model for believing women. We'll just turn to 1 Peter. And this is for you ladies, so happy to have you here. Sarah is used in the Bible as a role model for women. And that's interesting that it's Sarah. Because, from our study, Sarah, she had her flaws, but we all have our flaws. You know, like I said earlier, it was her idea to bring Hagar into the marriage, and then immediately she, gets mad at Abraham for it. So it is. But this is what Peter writes about Sarah here. 1 Peter chapter 3, verses 3 through 6. And again, this is to the women. Do not let your adorning be external, the braiding of hair and the putting on of gold jewelry, or the clothing you wear, but let your adorning be the hidden person of the heart with the imperishable beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which in God's sight is very precious. For this is how the holy women who hoped in God used to adorn themselves by submitting to their own husbands. As Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord, and you are her children, if you do good and do not fear anything that is frightening. That's interesting. And do not fear anything that is frightening. You're called to be brave, women. Okay? I mean, Sarah had to be brave to follow Abraham in this land of giants. Okay? At the end of chapter 22, the family was living in Beersheba. We just went over that last week. After Abraham's willing to sacrifice Isaac, they returned back and lived in the land of Beersheba. But sometime since that event 20 years ago, they have relocated back north to this place called Kiriath Arba, which means 4 cities. And I looked into this name, and apparently it's named after Anakim giants. Okay, and so apparently there might have been like 4 giants that have this place named after them. One in particular named Arba. Just by tradition, that's what it says. So that's pretty cool because, again, the land of Canaan, as the Jews are going to know when they spy out Israel or the promised land, is full of giants still. So it's later called Hebron. So at this time, it's called Kiriath Arba, but in Moses' time when he's writing this, it'll be called Hebron, and that place is still Hebron to this day. Near his old ally Mamre's land. Remember back in Genesis 13 when Abraham first gets in the promised land, he ends up settling down at the Oaks of Mamre, who was his ally, who helped him go rescue Lot, although how much helping they really did, we don't know. Okay, so he's already got relations there, friends, if you will. And this is all taking place 20 miles south of Jerusalem. So here is Jerusalem. They were living in Beersheba down here and were west of the Dead Sea, but now they've relocated back up to Hebron. Okay. Despite living in the area for 60 years, Abraham humbly considers himself and calls himself a temporary resident alien. That's how we would translate it, a temporary resident alien, because that's what he is, right? He doesn't own any property. He's still a sojourner. He's lived in tents. He's been moving all around the area. He even ended up in Egypt for a while. Okay, but that's what we are as well. We are to consider ourselves like Abraham in this regard. So I'm going to read through these 3 passages really quick. And this, again, it's interesting. In that email, the first question I asked is, in that email to you guys yesterday was, what do you call your home? And I won't ruin JD's service, but that's another thing he brings up today. Is he in our email list? Is he getting... Because he keeps stealing my thunder, okay?
His mom and dad are sitting back here.
Where? Oh, hey! You tell him I said that. Actually, don't. He scares me. He's very smart. Okay. Hebrew.
Dig yourself out.
Yeah, I know. No, it's a running thing we got going on in here. It's like he just keeps we're on the same. It's like we have the same spirit in us almost. The Holy Spirit. It's kind of weird. All right. Hebrews 11 verses 9 through 10. By faith, he went to live in the land of promise. Of course, talking about Abraham. Actually, we'll start at verse 8. By faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to a place where he was to receive as an inheritance. And he went out, not knowing where he was going. By faith, he went to live in the land of promise, as in a foreign land, living in tents with Isaac and Jacob. They still have tents. Heirs with him of the same promise. For he was looking forward to the city that has foundations, whose designer and builder is God. So Abraham and his kids didn't have their mind set on temporary dwellings on earth. They had this heavenly perspective, okay? Leviticus 25:23. The land shall not, this is God speaking, the land shall not be sold in perpetuity, for the land is mine. So even the promised land that he's giving the Israelites, he's saying the land is mine, for you are strangers and sojourners with me. In all the country you possess, you shall allow a redemption of the land. And then we follow up finally with 1 Chronicles chapter 29, 14 through 15. But who am I, and what is my people, that we should be able thus to offer willingly? For all things come from you, obviously God, and of your own have we given you. For here we go. For we are strangers before you and sojourners, as all our fathers were, like Abraham. Our days on the earth are like a shadow, and there is no abiding. Don't get too comfortable, it's saying, on this earth, because you ain't staying here forever. Okay? Good. I mean, yeah, there's a part of you that's like, this place is sinful and wicked, and it's hard, you know. This temptation, just take me to heaven, take me home, you know. Sometimes we feel like that. And I'd say that's a good thing, you know. We're not focused on earthly dwellings, okay? Neither was Abraham. So he still doesn't own any of the promised land promised him, but that's about to change here in this chapter. Though Abraham knew God, he still mourned for the loss of his wife. All right, it's not a sin to mourn the loss of your wife. All right, Abraham does that, just to make that clear. Unless you hate your wife and you're happy she's gone, but that's not a good sign either. Okay. Carrie's like, keep moving on. I could tell a really funny joke right now. It's not about us, but.
Well, you have to.
Do I? Okay, you brought it up. All right. Just really briefly, there's this joke that goes like, this guy has a neighbor, and his neighbor's an older guy who has dementia. And he's like, do you have any idea how hard it is to live next to a guy who has dementia? Every morning he comes and knocks on my door and asks about where his wife is. And so every day in the morning, his neighbor has to tell this old guy, your wife's dead, sir. And he says, you know what? It's all worth it, because every morning I get to see the big smile that comes across his face. Hey, I didn't want to tell it, but you pushed me, okay? That's on you. It's not my joke, all right? I probably heard that from an unbeliever. At least that's what it sounds like, all right? So these Hittites are called, Hittites mean sons of Heth. Heth is Canaan's son, okay? And Canaan is Noah's grandson, whose descendants were cursed by Noah because they uncovered his Ham, who is Canaan's father, uncovered Noah's nakedness, okay? So the Hittites are the great-grandson of Noah, and they are true blood Canaanites, unlike the later Anatolian Hittite empire that would grow, but it would also bring in all these other surrounding cultures, right? These are true blood Canaanites that we're talking about here. And I know Becky knows this because she talked to me about it a little bit on Wednesday after our class, but I did more research, and this is some fun information, all right, about how we know we can trust the Bible, okay, which was the topic of my MELT class this week. For much of the 19th century, critics of the Bible's historical reliability often dismissed the Hittites, mentioned over 40 times in the Old Testament, as fictional or exaggerated, since no extra biblical evidence, any evidence found outside of the Bible, have been found to corroborate their existence as a significant people. This skepticism was fueled by the era's higher criticism, which questioned the Bible's historicity in the absence of Hittite records and known ancient Near Eastern sources. The turning point, however, came in the early 20th century with excavations at Hattusa, Turkey, the capital of the Hittite Empire. In 1906 to 1907, German archaeologist Hugo Winkler unearthed a royal archive of over 10,000 cuneiform clay tablets in Akkadian and Hittite. These included diplomatic correspondence matching Egyptian references to Hittites from the Amarna letters, 14th century BCE, confirming the Hittites as a major Bronze Age empire that rivaled Egypt and Babylon, the Ur of the Chaldeans. Winkler's find was this, quote, smoking gun, proving proving the Hittites' vast civilization, including the Anatolian homeland and Syrian outposts. This, quote, rediscovery silenced many skeptics, vindicating the Bible's portrayal of the Hittites as a real influential group. For the longest time, they had no historical archaeological evidence that the Hittites even existed. But just in the last 100 or 200 years, they have found that evidence and proved the Bible once again to be right. Isn't that cool? Yeah. You can trust it even when you don't know you can trust it. That's called faith. So the Hittites answered Abraham, "Hear us, my Lord. You are a prince of God among us. Bury your dead in the choicest of our tombs. None of us will withhold from you his tomb to hinder you from burying your dead." So first thing I notice is that Abraham has clearly made an impact on his neighbors, right? Right? His faithfulness, they know he's a prince of God and not one of these pagan neighbors who might have been offering up their own children to idols as a sacrifice. They don't have any beef with him, all right? That's what the kids say for squabbles, I think. Beef, all right? In fact, while Abraham presented himself as a foreigner in their land, they call him Lord and a Prince of God. And the words are Elohim, again from Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created Elohim. Elohim Nasi, which means lifted up, ruler, or mighty Prince of God. So what was Abraham really, what was the point of God calling Abraham and his descendants as the Israelites? They are to be God's light to the world, right? The nation that represents God. And this patriarch of the Israelites has already begun acting as a light to the surrounding nations, right? Whatever they know about this Elohim, this one true God, they know because of God's light, Abraham, okay? They see Abraham as a powerful man, blessed by God, because he's rich, as we're going to find out. He's rich, and he's had kids at an old age, okay? He's blessed, and he is worthy to live among them. So he's respected by outsiders for his faith. Now, this is a question that just came to my mind that I want to pose to you guys. Get you to wake up a little bit here, as if my joke didn't already do that. Okay. Paul says the same should be true for pastors, but we can equate that to all Christians. That we should be, respected by outsiders of the faith, kind of like Abraham is here. Back me up on this, Polly, with 1 Timothy 3:7.
Moreover, he must be well thought of by outsiders, so that he may not fall into disgrace, into a snare of the devil.
Okay, so Abraham here is being thought of well by outsiders, these Canaanites, and Paul says the same is supposed to be true for church leaders like pastors, but we can apply that to all Christians. So then why is it, this is the question that came to my mind, why is it that followers of Christ are told to expect to be hated and persecuted by outsiders? John 15:19 through 20, Polly?
If you were of the world would love you as its own. But because you are not of the world, but I chose you out of the world, therefore the world hates you. Remember the word that I said to you, a servant is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will also persecute you. If they kept my words, they will also keep yours.
So which is it? Are we to be respected by the world and outsiders, or are we to be hated by the world and outsiders? Respectfully hated? What you got, John?
To me, you've got two truths or two facts, and two truths or two facts can be present at the same time, and it doesn't mean that either one of those are incorrect.
I 100% agree with that. You got something else to add?
I think I'd also add a good biblical example is Daniel. In Daniel chapter 6, when the Medes and Persians essentially usurp the Babylonians and this new government that comes in, the Persian satraps, they see Daniel's faith and how committed he was to God. It's very interesting that they say the only way we can trip him up if it has something to do with his God.
Yeah.
Right? And so they recognize and sort of respected the fact that he was so committed to his faith that they knew that we can't get him to fall into any sort of immorality. So we have to do something more religious or theological to trip him up.
They had to act deceitful.
They still persecuted him, and they still hated him in some ways. Right? I think that is, at least to me, that's the sort of balance as I would understand it.
That's how I came to. It's a balance here, and that's a great example with Daniel. He was so righteous that the only way to trip him up was to act unrighteously themselves and deceive the king, and that made them go to the lion's den, right? Okay. So, here's my answer. As the patriarch of God's people, first and foremost, Abraham had a different mission, right? His was simply to live, really. He's already been promised these covenant blessings, and he's the patriarch. So his mission is just to accept God's blessing through the covenants. But ours in these last days is to make disciples per Jesus, which requires preaching repentance and standing boldly upon hard truths, something most people don't like to hear. John chapter 3, 20 through 21.
For everyone who does wicked things hates the light and does not come to the light, lest his works should be exposed. But whoever does what is true comes to light, so that it may be clearly seen that his works have been carried out in God.
Exactly. So, we're to preach repentance in the gospel, which people who love the darkness will hate. They hate the light. Turn that light off. It hurts my eyes. All right? But while we do that, we maintain our own innocence, like Stephen and John were saying. We maintain our innocence, per Matthew 10:16. So, yeah, we speak boldly, but we have that log out of our eye, right? And so people can't accuse us of being criminals or whatever. The Hittites have misunderstood Abraham's request. They tell him to choose any tomb of theirs he wishes, but Abraham, however, is not looking to share, okay? He's looking to purchase property to own as a permanent possession. So Abraham comes to them. He's like, hey, give me a piece of land, so this cave, so I can bury my dead wife. And they're like, just bury your wife among our tombs. It's all cool. And he's like, no, it's not what I mean. I want to bury her in my, and there's a reason for this. I want to bury my wife in my tomb, my own tomb here. So Abraham rose and bowed to the Hittites, the people of the land, and he said to them, if you are willing that I should bury my dead out of my sight, hear me and entreat for me Ephron, the son of Zohar, that he may give me the cave of Machpelah, which he owns. It is at the end of his field. For the full price, let him give it to me in your presence as property for a burying place. So he bows to the locals. Obviously, that's a show of great respect, still is to this day in some cultures. Both parties will continue to go out of their ways to remain polite and warm to the other during negotiations. We already talked about why. Abraham's still in mourning, most likely. And obviously, as we'll discuss, this is not his land. He's a foreigner, so he's going to be respectful. But yet they see him as a Prince of God here. So out of their respect, the Hittites have graciously offered to share their tombs with this foreigner, but Abraham singles out Ephron before the group. Ephron is sitting among this group of Hittites here that he's speaking to. And the reason why that it's being pointed out that, where is it? In the presence. Let him give it to me in your presence. The reason that all this is going down publicly here is because at the time they didn't have any deeds for land that the government files away, okay? So transactions were made in front of many witnesses. So Abraham wants to buy a small piece of Ephron's land, specifically a cave that's at the end of his property. And the way I kind of took that is possibly to inconvenience Ephron as little as possible. Like, I don't want to track all the way through your field to get to a burial site. Just give me this little cave that's on the end of your property, and we'll be good. He was willing to pay whatever the price was worth it to Ephron. For the full price, let him give it to me. And another thing you can take away from this is that Abraham he's clearly familiar with his neighbors here. He knows who this Ephron of Zohar is. He knows Ephron and he knows his daddy, okay? And not only that, he knows that he owns a specific cave. I'd be like, if I was Ephron, I'd be like, what are you doing, like scoping out my property, sir? You a stalker? All right? That's a nice cave you got there, Ephron. Give it to me, all right? After Lot departed for the Dead Sea, Abraham lived by the oaks of Mamre and Hebron and built an altar there. So that's how he probably became familiar. I mean, he's been a sojourner in this land for decades, so it's clearly obvious that they've gotten to know each other a little bit. Here's another thing that is important for history. Becoming a landowner, albeit a small one, just a small cave owner, albeit a landowner, in the area would slightly solidify, just a little bit, Abraham's place among them in that region, because he's going to own a permanent piece of property, right? someone does that, it's a big deal. You know, China comes to the United States and buys a piece of property next to a government research building. We're kind of like bells and whistles, okay? That's a big deal. Here you have this foreigner coming in to, you know, their area in Canaan and is like, hey, I'm going to buy a permanent piece of land. Let us think about this a second. But they already know they can trust him because he's, quote, a prince of God. This is also why Abraham's still remaining humble toward the group. So now Ephron was sitting among the Hittites, and Ephron the Hittite answered Abraham in the hearing of the Hittites, of all who went in and at the gate of his city, no, my Lord, hear me. I give you the field, and I give you the cave that's in it. In the sight of the sons of my people, I give it to you. Bury your dead. So this is where it starts to get like a little tricky. Like this is where it becomes important to know the culture of the time. So per Lot and Sodom, because you're like, hey, Ephron guy's a pretty stand-up dude. He's like, just take it, man. I see you're in mourning. You're a big crybaby. I'm sorry that your wife passed away. Just take my field, okay? Man, what a sweetheart. Per Lot and Sodom, and last week's promise, you know, Lot sat at the gate, and we talked about how that represents where the city leaders were convening. Lot was a city leader. And last week we talked about how God promised Abraham that his descendants, the Israelites, would, quote, possess the gates of the cities of their enemies. The gates of the cities represents like the city itself. It's the city council, I guess the way we would put it. It's the city council. This area of town at the city gates was the place of meeting for city leaders to conduct their affairs. So this is like a citywide affair going on here, okay? Ephron's following response to Abraham's request before the gathered Hittites is formal and for the record. So when Abraham's saying, you know, in the hearing of the Hittites, I'm saying this, you know, hear me, I give you the field. Ephron's saying, in the hearing of the Hittites and the sight of the sons of my people, he's basically saying what we would say is for the record or put this on the record kind of thing in front of all these witnesses. Okay, I'm giving you the city, let everyone know. But what's really going on here is this is Ephron saying, let the negotiations begin. That's what Ephron's really saying. Instead of selling the small plot at the end of his field to Abraham, that Abraham wants this little cave, Ephron offers to give the cave as well as the field it's on to Abraham for free as a gift. All right? It seems like a mighty noble act, and that's how I took it. Man, thank you, Ephron. You're so sweet. I just wanted this little cave, and now you're giving me this field as well. Thank you. But there's a catch here. This was the customary way of the time to beginning a bargain in that culture. The seller, in this case Ephron, would ceremoniously offer to give the item to the buyer, in this case Abraham, but expecting, as it was at the culture of the time, that Abraham would refuse it. So if Abraham would have been like, oh, thank you so much, everyone would have been like, wait, what? You're not supposed to accept that as a free gift.
Yeah, it's still like that. Like you go to the Middle East.
Is it?
You go to a... it's kind of funny. I've got a lot of stories like this. If you go out to eat with an Arab or anybody, and it's time to pay, you're supposed to be the first to say, no, hey, let me pay. And then you have to respond with an even greater sort of gesture, like, no, brother, I have to pay. And then you go back, literally, you can get into like an hour-long like fight about who's going to pay.
We still do that in our culture sometimes as well, right? So I'm Johnny Shortcut. I'm just like, all right, you can pay.
Are you sure?
Yeah. Are you sure? Are you sure? Yeah. We should just speak what we mean, right? You're paying. So after refusing the gift, the seller would then put up a price. So Ephron would then put up a price. And if you're a negotiator, if you're any used car salesmen here, you always start high, right? Start high in your negotiations.
Steve makes me go to the bathroom because I'm like, okay.
Smart man.
He said,
Yeah.
don't you need to go to the bathroom?
So Ephron's presenting Ephron, what we're going to get into, he's going to start the bargaining off with a high price, but he's kind of present it as if it's no thing. You know, oh, it's just this. So now we're starting to see this Ephron's kind of a little sly dog, isn't he? Right? But that's just how the culture is.
Hey, Kevin, your little question there. Can used car salesmen be saved?
Oh, man, that's a tough one. I don't know if anyone can answer that one. Can used cars salesmen be saved? I don't know. Same thing for tax collectors, right? If Jesus can save tax collectors, he can save car salesmen, all right? I mean, you're getting ripped off if you go to a car salesman, but they're straight up stealing from you, these tax collectors. So Ephron may have included the field because selling the cave alone wasn't worth getting rid of it. You know, that's probably what he's doing here. Adding the field would up the price of just having the cave. So if I'm going to lose the cave, I'm going to make you buy the field as well. I'm going to present it as a gift. But that way, if we're going to make this transaction, I'm going to make out big time, all right? You're just going to take the whole thing. And this may even be a way, possibly, this is all speculation, to persuade Abraham to agree to take out like a long-term lease. And that's basically what he's been doing as he's been sojourning around. You know, if I present the field with the cave, and at a high price, Abraham just might be like, all right, how about I just, lease it from you? How about I just rent, kind of a thing, okay? So Abraham bowed down, it's his turn in the negotiations. He bowed down before the people of the land, and he said to Ephron in the hearing of the people of the land, but if you will, hear me. I give the price of the field. Accept it from me that I may bury my dead there. So for a second time, Abraham humbly bows down before the Hittites to respectfully resist an offer. He's not a landowner yet. He's a sojourner. He's got to be nice. Understanding God's promises to him, he is not interested in borrowing, sharing, or renting or leasing. By his faith, he's set on purchasing a permanent burial plot for his wife, himself. It will become Isaac's as well, and Jacob's actually, in a place his descendants will eventually call their homeland. So this is another important cultural thing here. At that time, in this history, people buried their dead among ancestors in their homeland, okay? So what Abraham's doing is he wants to have someone in his family, in his household died, his wife, Sarah. By burying her in this promised land, what he's saying is, this is where my descendants are going to live, because God promised it to me. This is an act of faith by Abraham, demonstrating his resolve to never return to his old life in Ur of the Chaldees. If he buries his wife there and it's his land, he doesn't intend on going back to his original homeland. So this is a big act of faith by Abraham. Okay. So Ephron answered Abraham, my Lord, listen to me. A piece of land worth 400 shekels of silver? What is that between you and me? Bury your dead. Abraham listened to Ephron, and Abraham weighed out for Ephron the silver that he had named in the hearing of the Hittites, 400 shekels of silver, according to the weight current among the merchants. So Abraham won't accept the field and the cave as a gift from Ephron, as expected, because he knows the custom. Ephron takes his turn in the negotiations to do what negotiators do, casually throw out the high price point of 400 shekels of shekels of silver. Shekels of silver, okay? Say that 50 times, I dare you. I'll spit on everyone. As if it's reasonable for these two wealthy friends. What is 400 shekels between you and I? We both got money. Just do it. And then he follows it up with bury your dead, which we'll get here. But just so we have, this is like one of the few places in the Bible where we could compare how much that 4 shekels is. In Jeremiah 32:9, someone else purchases a field here, Jeremiah. Does anybody know off the top of their head how much for this field? If you really know your Bible, if you memorize this.
Man. Was it 32?
You're closer than the other numbers I heard. You're close. 40? Just that's not as close, but yeah. No more guessing, or we're gonna figure it out before I get there. 32:9. Yep. So I bought the field at Anathoth from Hanamel, my cousin, and weighed out the money to him. Again, that's how they determine how much weight, how much it was worth. 17 shekels of silver. 17 for a field. For one, it's 17. He's being charged 400. Now we don't know how big these fields are, but still. And I guess somewhere else in the Bible, there's a mountain that was sold for 6,000 shekels. Okay, and it might have been Mount Moriah. I don't know which mountain it was. All right, but 400 shekels for a field and a cave. It must have been a pretty sweet cave. In fact, we know exactly what cave it is, as we'll get to. Ephron tactfully conceals his shrewdness under the guise of sympathy. What's 400 shekels of silver? You're bleeding me dry here, Ephron. He's urging Abraham by saying, bury your dead, to seal the deal so he can bury his wife and move on as soon as possible. Don't even bother negotiating the rest of this out. Just just give me 400 so you can go bury your dead. Man, what a sly dog, all right? It's Ephron, so he is a car salesman, okay? Working on Abraham's emotions here. God,
I hope you're not insulting anyone.
is someone really a car salesman in here?
My husband was.
That's okay.
A very honest, very strong Christian man.
Well, that
Never cheated anyone out of $1.
that answers Tom's question.
I work with a whole dealership full of non-Christians.
What's that?
I work with a dealership that are all Christians.
It's like everything else, right? You're going to find
It's
Christians and non.
exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
When I was coming out of the Navy, I bought a motorcycle and drove it from San Diego back to Ohio, which really upset my dad. And my dad just got diagnosed with cancer. So as I'm doing this thing, I didn't know at the time because I was a snot-nosed kid. I didn't know anything. But man, did they rip me off. Man, did they rip me off. They basically sold me a motorcycle for the price of a Ferrari, right? So yeah, you can have really good Christian car dealers, as we all know. But man, is it a slimy game
When I
sometimes.
asked that question, I was asking it in the spirit of Nathaniel. Can any good thing come out of Nazareth?
Yeah. Yeah, there you go.
Yes.
Yeah. And same goes for tax collectors. I'm sure there are Christian tax collectors. I just have yet to meet one.
Real good.
Kevin,
Yeah.
just something contemporary. I mean, there's some elements of the population that are anti-Jewish, and it goes back to situations where they are the best negotiators, better than car salesmen. And if you look today, most of the rich people in the world, the Jewish control the wealth on the planet. There's probably more billionaires that are Jewish proportionally than any other population on the earth.
Oh, yeah.
So some people look at the Jews in a very negative way
Well,
because they're good negotiators.
Have we ever heard Jew 'em down?
Well, it's funny you guys bring that up because I think that is my next question here. Is this the same patriarch? Is this the same Abraham we have from chapter 18? Remember he was negotiating with God for Sodom? He was like, will you destroy it for 40, right? He's negotiating with God here, and all of a sudden he just goes, okay, 400 shekels. What happened to the Jewish Abraham we know? Right? But that also, we followed up with this. What was he negotiating with God about? Was it about money? No, it was not. It was about the righteous. He was standing up for the righteous in Sodom, right? So we never get the sense that money and material wealth are important to Abraham. He's just like, all right, 400, that's it. I'm not going to bother negotiating. 400, I got the land, all by faith in God. Polly, remind us of what happened with him and Lot in Genesis 13:9.
Is it not the whole land before you? Separate yourself from me. If you take the left hand, then I will go to the right. Or if you take the right hand, then I will go to the left.
So here's Abraham telling his nephew Lot, listen, we got this land here. You get first pick. Abraham didn't really care. It wasn't until God was like, get up, survey land, and go somewhere that he did. He had his mind on eternal things. Hebrews 11, again, mentions Abraham quite a bit. 11 verse 16. But as it is, they desire a better country, that is the patriarchs like Abraham, and that is a heavenly one. They desire a better country, that is a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared for them a city. Okay? He's not clinging to his silver. He'll give the 400 shekels. As demonstrated in the previous chapter with his willingness to even give up his son Isaac for God, he's a spiritually focused man. Okay? His mind is not set on the things of this world. So the field of Ephron, this is our last slide in this chapter, is the field in Ephron in Machpelah, which was to the east of Mamre, the field with the cave that was in it, and all the trees that were in the field throughout its whole area was made over to Abraham as a possession in the presence of the Hittites before all who went into the gate of the city. And really quick, I got to point out, this is proof that the chapters and verses were not inspired by God. They put a chapter or a verse division right in the middle of a sentence. Who does that, right? Verse 19. After this, Abraham buried Sarah, his wife, in the cave of the field of Machpelah, east of Mamre, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan, The field and the cave that is in it were made over to Abraham as property for a burying place by the Hittites. So again, Mamre was Abraham's ally during Lot's rescue. We talked about that, so we're good. Now this cave that he bought here in Hebron is still here to this day in Hebron, same place. They didn't move the cave, okay? It's called the Cave of the Patriarchs, or the Cave of Machpelah, and it's in the West Bank, all right? And this is it right here. And you're like, that's not a cave, that's a castle. Well, yeah, that's what these people do, right? They find these ancient sites like a well or a cave, and they completely surround it with man-made things. And you know when this was built? You probably know. Anyone else know when this is built? This castle-looking thing? Herod the Great built it just a few years before Jesus was born. And it's still there. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. It's like I want to take a chisel to him and be like, mine, I'm taking this souvenir. Don't let Kevin go to Israel. All right. I'm sorry, the West Bank. All right. We'll talk about that.
But that's not in Israel. That's in
It's in the annexed part of Israel. Well, it's the what do they call it? The
Palestine.
what do they call that area? It's not annexed. It's occupied land. Yeah. If we have time, again, I have bonus things to talk about. We might get into that a little bit more. So this is the cave where Abraham, Sarah, their son Isaac, his wife Rebekah, that we'll get into in the next chapter, his son Jacob, and his wife Leah were all buried, and was the only land Abraham owned as a possession. And he'll die having faith in God without seeing God's promises fully realized. Polly, you have Hebrews 11:13, right?
These all died in faith, not having received the things promised, but having seen them and greeted them from afar, and having acknowledged that they were strangers and exiles on the earth.
He wouldn't have died in faith if God gave him the entire promised land, would he? There's no faith in that because you got it, right? Faith is things not seen, right? The structure surrounding the cave was built. Oh, I already spoiled that. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. It just really excites me. That's really awesome. Ironically, the site is divided into, and I believe Stephen and I talked about this before in this class, the site is divided into half for the Jews, half for the Arabs, and has been plagued by violence for centuries. Like dozens of people have been killed, mostly by the Muslims, but even the radical Jew once shot up several Muslims, okay? But a lot of death, a lot of violence, until the past few months. Yeah, until the past few months, and that's what we'll get into in the next slide. Just like the Temple Mount, things are becoming, let's say, more occupied now by the Jews, the Israelites. And we'll talk about why that is. But before we do that, yes?
Well, while we've been talking about this Cave of Machpelah, I was thinking seems to be a parallel that comes later on in 2 Samuel when King David wanted to buy a place for an altar, and he wanted to purchase the threshing floor that was owned by Araunah. Mm-hmm. And in verse 24 of chapter 24, it says, "But the king said to Araunah," when Araunah offered to give it to him, he said to him, "No, but I will buy it from you for a price. I will not offer burnt offerings to the Lord, my God, that cost me nothing." So David bought the threshing floor. And I believe that threshing floor turns out to be the mount in Jerusalem where the temple was built.
Yeah, I think that's right. I have to refer back to my studies. Yeah.
But it just seemed to me like
it's an interesting
this
parallel.
whole thing that Abraham wasn't going to just throw his wife away. He was going to own the land that he buried her on.
Yeah.
So there's a certain nobility in the whole thing that I think is really neat.
Yeah.
There's a good thing that's for us to look at today, that when we sacrifice to give something to the Lord, maybe the above the tithe for a missionary or whatever, it says God will supply all our needs. And you have to give something that hurts a little to find out how much He can do for you.
Yeah.
If we have no pain, we have no joy in the blessing of no pain.
It goes back to the faith thing. The only way we're told to test God is with our tithes, you know. There's got to be a faith element in there. It's got to be that sacrifice that hurts a little bit. Goes back again last week to Abraham sacrificing Isaac. If he hated his son, do you think God would have asked him to do it? Because he probably would have done it. All right, anyone else before we move on? So that cave, this is a modern map. This is Hebron right here. It's still there, all right? And it's in the West Bank. Now, we'll talk a little, and here's Jerusalem right here in this little outlet, all right? This little outpost. In Gaza, of course, a lot's going on there right now. Here's Beersheba, where Abraham was living. So the whole thing about the West Bank in the news right now is that Israel is starting finally, because they've been talking about it for a while, they're starting to build their housing developments in the West Bank, so out here, into this land that the world wants to say belongs to the Palestinians. So this is something I wrote up, so we're all on the same page here. Since the October 7th attacks in 2023, the Israelis have ceased caring about what other nations think of them, okay? Because they were attacked, and then once they defended themselves and this war on Gaza started, the whole world condemned Israel. So Israel's like, all right, we don't even care anymore. No matter what we do, you're going to hate us. So they're becoming more bold now, which is why the cave of Machpelah, where the descendants are buried, start opening up now, because the Israelis are starting to stand up in force. That's why the Dome of the Rock, yeah, what's that mount? I'm having a blank now. Where's the Dome of the Rock? Yeah, Mount Moriah, but what's it called now? The Temple Mount. Thank you, Kevin. The Temple Mount. No, the Temple Mount is now opening up because, again, the Israelites are starting to get bold now. They don't care so much what other people think of them, except for maybe the United States because of Trump. But even then, Trump said, I don't want you guys better not start building out there. And the Israelites are like, we're doing it. And so why are they doing it? Because these other nations have been talking about starting a Palestinian state officially. Yeah. And Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel, already said that's not going to happen. There's going to be no Palestinian state. So keep in mind that the only reason that Gaza exists is because in the early 2000s under George W. Bush, they were pressured to give it up to the Palestinians here so that maybe they'd have peace. How'd that work out? Do you think the Israelites are starting to learn their lesson on this whole peace negotiation things? They're very weary even about the current one with Gaza. Sure. But we do know they're not going to fully learn that lesson because of the Antichrist peace deal, right? So Israel began their plans after you had just recently Britain. Actually, we're going to talk about this here. 4 major Western nations just recognized a week or so ago the Palestinian state. It's still not official, but more nations are now recognizing a Palestinian state, and added to them were the UK, Canada, Australia, and Portugal. Okay? So as this is happening, the Jews are starting to build up the West Bank here with their housing. What they're doing is they're claiming the land to prevent a Palestinian state is what they're doing. All right. Keep in mind the West Bank. They actually in the 1967 Six-Day War they took over that land. All right. They won it fair and square because they were attacked and yet they prospered. Right. But the world doesn't see it that way. So they're building right now. This picture is them building. This is happening right now to this day. In this day, they're building housing developments to encircle Jerusalem to cause like a bulwark so that if there is a Palestinian state, they can't try to claim any of Jerusalem. So they're pushing as many Jews as they can into the West Bank right now. Yeah. So that's just a quick up and dirty on the politics going on in the Middle East right now. Yeah.
I think it's interesting that no other Middle Eastern country will take any of the Palestinians in as refugees.
Yeah, like Jordan
Yeah.
or Egypt. It's because they're crazy, like not all of them, but that's a crazy ideology they got there. Not even Jordan or Egypt want the quote-unquote Palestinians, the Gazans, all right?
Oh, yeah, I know. So, of course, being over there, this is a prime issue that you have to deal with as a missionary to Arabs. But it is quite interesting to me. So I have a very good friend from Kuwait, and the Arabs have always sort of seen the Palestinians simply as a political football. And they just sort of like pump them around just so that they can sort of maneuver and get their own sort of agenda in place. But they've become such a nuisance to so many of them. it was quite explosive in 2020 when Mohammed bin Zayed, the ruler of Abu Dhabi and the president of the UAE, kind of really headed the Abraham Accords. And it really signaled a radically different shift of just how the other surrounding Arab states thought about the Palestinians. And so during this time when October 7th happened, I had friends, of course, in the Middle East, and what you see like on the news and what's reported is not really what's on the ground. So many of them are like, "Oh my gosh, these guys again! Like, we're so done with them. Just stop ruining everything." Especially Saudi right now, and I don't know if people realize this. Saudi is massively just reforming in like radical ways. They're actually kind of, I would say, transitioning away from conservative Islam in many ways. And this was such an ear to Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince, that internally so many of them are like, oh, just get it over with, just leave and don't sort of like bog us down with this whole sort of Arab problem anymore. So like, I think with that also in mind, that the Israelis are able to kind of, I think, analyze the true political nature of things. They are more emboldened, because not even externally, of course, the Arab leadership is always going to say, yes, we're for the Palestinians and everything like that, but like behind closed doors, like in the shadows, they're much more frustrated with them.
Why would countries like France and the UK and others, why would they
Support it?
support it?
It's very, very easy answer, because of the constituency of their voting populace. Because many of these European nations have brought in many Muslims, and they are scared of losing political power. So what do? You pander to the Muslims and say, "Oh yeah, we're gonna support a Palestinian state." I think in reality, a lot of these guys, they recognize that it's really just societal and political suicide to try to support a Palestinian state. But because they have gotten, I would say, so weak, just ideologically, politically, they're scared of the Muslims that are in these European nations, and so they're like, yeah, we'll support it.
Their ungodliness has put them in a corner that they
Yeah.
can't get out.
In Dearborn, Michigan.
Okay, let me stop you there really quick, because you guys are getting ahead of all you said. For the day of the Lord is near upon all the nations, Obadiah 15. As you have done, it shall be done to you. Your deeds shall return on your own heads. The world is turning against the Jewish people, those God has blessed, and now they have 85 Sharia courts in the UK. And it's as you guys are just saying, it's becoming increasing. They have to vote for the Muslims, or they're going to be pushed out of power. They're being taken over through this jihad. You know, people think of jihad and they think, oh, it's like an invasion war. It's with taqiyya, or they're lying to then slowly, take over. And that's exactly what is. I gotta jump ahead to what you were saying. Here it is, Dearborn, Michigan, and Minneapolis. It's coming here. We have more calls of prayer being pushed out into the streets over loudspeakers in Dearborn and Minneapolis, and it's not only those places. I looked into it this week. Do you know in this century, and that'd be in the last 25 years, how many mosques have been converted into churches? 0. I looked into it and I had AI back and do even deeper research. 0 mosques have been converted into churches in Western Christian nations like ours. You know how many churches have been shut down and turned into mosques? Thousands. In the last 10 years, it's up 31%. It's judgment. It's judgment. All right. This is what I was gonna get into this stuff, but we ran out of time.
I want to say something to that point.
Yeah.
To give some further nuance. A lot of them are these liberal, mainstream Protestant denominations. It shows you what happens when you abandon the gospel.
Exactly. Same thing for politics as well. Yeah.
We found that when we had rental property, I had a Muslim lady, 2 sisters come, and they wanted to rent 2 units. Well, I had 1. And they said, well, can't you ask somebody to move? They wanted to be together. And that's the way they do it. They go in and they push their way any way they can do it.
I didn't want to cut you off. Did you want to say your thing on Dearborn?
Oh, no, it was just that I saw on the news that the people that can hear this, you're not supposed to be above 7 decibels.
Noise ordinances, yeah.
Noise ordinances. And when they have the call to prayer, it's 70 decibels. So and people they're afraid to do anything.
The city council shrugged them off like, it's the city ordinances, but oh well. So, yeah, so it's up to you guys. We can either continue this when we start next week, or we can just go right into chapter 24. All right?
It's your decision.
It's my decision. I'll pray about it. I'll see how he moves me this week.
Okay.
All right.
See, who?
The Holy Spirit. Do I need to introduce you to? Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this opportunity to study your word as a group and be led by you into the truth and teach us things that maybe we did not know before. Not for our own, glory or just our edification to grow us in your spirit, but for the blessings of others and those we interact with in this fallen world, that we may show them the light, no matter what their background is, Muslim, Jewish, someone who believes in your son Jesus, but it's the wrong Jesus. Whoever it is that you lead into our lives, that we may show them the truth, and that is your son Jesus of the word. To you be the glory in all things. Work through us and in us for your glory. In Jesus' name, amen.